Okay, so we are live. I'm so excited about this book, first off. And I hope everyone else is as well. But tell us in the comments where you're from and um, if you're excited as I am. I'm sure everyone is. We're going to be giving away 2 copies of this book. So you can enter to win by commenting. But let's see. So we are doing A Waltz with Traitors with A.L. Sowards. And guys, I got to tell you, this cover is beautiful. But Ayla is going to tell us a little bit about her inspiration and kind of just a little bit about the book before we show you the cover.
Okay, yeah. So this is historical fiction or historical Christian fiction. There's some Christian themes too. And how this happened is I was doing research for another World War II book. I actually have it here, The Spider and the Sparrow. And this came out years ago. But when I was doing the research for it, I just was watching these like a lecture series with my husband. And one of the World War I lecturers just mentioned in passing this group of POWs. There were Czechs and Slovaks. They were stuck in Russia at the end of World War I, and they ended up taking over the Trans-Siberian Railroad. And I had two thoughts. The first is like, how did this ragtag group of POWs take over that railroad? It's like the longest railroad in the world. How did that happen? And the next thought was, I want to write that book. So eventually I did write the book. And it's funny, my books are not coming out in the order I published them. This was actually, I wrote this after I wrote The Red Grave Murders and before I wrote Of Sword and Shadow. But I think this is the right time for it to come out. So it's good. But it tells the story of a group of POWs. They were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire when the war began, when World War I began. But they weren't enthusiastic supporters. They felt more like subjects, a little oppressed. They weren't really happy to be there. So a lot of them, when they were fighting the Russians, they would either get captured, and sometimes it would be like, oh, look, the Russians are flanking us. We could, do a death charge, or we could just surrender. And like, I'm not dying for an emperor I don't like. So a lot of them, and that was kind of, sorry, I'm not very articulate. That's why I write, because I don't speak very well. But there were, rumors throughout the army that the Czechs weren't reliable, and then they were treated even worse. But so a lot of them were captured, or they defected outright, or the entire group was like, we're just going to surrender because it's not worth dying for this. This isn't a cause we believe in. And so they were stuck in these camps in Russia. But there was this idea that if they could help fight with the Allies, if they could join Britain, France, Russia, eventually the United States, that they could have a say at the peace settlements and they could get a country of their own. And so I think that's something that a lot of readers now can understand, a desire to have your own country, a desire to have freedom. And it's interesting because this story was kind of big at the time. Woodrow Wilson was very much in favor of these countries or these nationalities in Europe having their own countries. But then after World War I, eventually the Nazis took over Central Europe, including Czechoslovakia, and they didn't want to talk about the Czechoslovak Legion because they had fought the Germans and done pretty well against them in World War I. And so they suppressed it. And then after World War II, Czechoslovakia was a country again, but then the communists took over, and the Czechoslovak Legion had fought the communists in Russia. So the communists kind of did the same thing. They suppressed this story. And so it's interesting that it was a story that was well known in like the 1920s, but most people probably haven't heard about it now. So I'm really excited that I can tell this story and bring this bit of history to life. And it's a fun setting. It's Russia during that time. There were 2 revolutions, and so the start of this story, the communists have taken over. The Tsar is in exile. They aren't sure where he is. And everything's just kind of chaos because there's still this massive war going on in Europe. And the Russian army has fallen apart. And it's an interesting setting. And it'll start in Ukraine and it goes all the way through Siberia. So I don't know, maybe you can show a map of that.
Show that one. Yeah, so I definitely haven't read anything from that time period in this setting. So this is very very new and unique, I feel like, which is good. I like different, and I think you do an excellent job of telling those stories that aren't, the ones that you read about in your history book in school. The little moments, the hidden moments in history, and you
right.
make
The few lines in a lecture you hear about, and like, I want to write that story.
Yes, this shows the railroad, doesn't it, right here?
Yeah, so the Trans-Siberian Railroad, I think it actually starts in Moscow officially. The characters in the book are going to start in Ukraine. But yeah, it's a huge stretch of railway. It goes through mountains, it goes through the steppe, it goes along the desert. It's a huge chunk of area that this book covers, which was kind of hard when I was researching, because I'd be like, okay, they're in the next town. What does this town look like? How do I find the information about the town? But it was also fun to have all those different settings. So yeah. And maybe you can show some pictures of the soldiers in the Czechoslovak Legion. They had these armored trains eventually, and so you'd have these trains, and that was kind of how you controlled the railroad, is you went along the rail lines and made sure no one could take it over. And one thing about Siberia and large stretches of Russia is there aren't a lot of options for transportation, especially during some times of the year. When everything's frozen, you could probably take, horse sled in a lot of areas if it's not too mountainous and there aren't too many forests. But a lot of seasons it's muddy, so you have the railroad track, and then there's the Great Moscow Road, but that's not a great maintained road. It's not like a highway or anything. And so if you had the railroad, you could control movement throughout the country. If you didn't, then it was really hard. It slowed things down, and it was really hard to have a military campaign.
It's kind of hard to believe that was a train too. Just all that.
Right? Yeah, these trains are pretty crazy. And there's obviously, it's a posed photo, but yeah, there's some members of the Legion, some legionnaires, and then there they are manning their train.
And that's just crazy that they had to do that in order to keep people away from the trains. Like, just the amount of people on top is crazy.
Right? Yeah. Oh, and I should probably talk a little bit about the title. And maybe you can pull up the Waltz picture. Also in this book, the Czechoslovak Legion, and then I've got a former Russian aristocrat who, a Soviet commissar, finds her family, and she has to run for her life. And so the waltz part is, it fits with the time period, and also there's a sham marriage involved in this book. So if you like arranged marriages or marriages of convenience, that's kind of what this is. It's a marriage that's meant to be temporary. There's more details about that, I think, in the B-liner, so we'll save that for later. And then the Traitors part of the title, these Czechs and Slovaks started the war as subjects of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So by allying with the British, the French, the Russians, the Americans, they were allying with their country's enemies. So they were traitors. If they were caught, they could be executed for treason. So that's where the Traitors comes in the title. So.
And this picture is beautiful.
Yes, Melanie Bateman did the drawing, and she really loves the World War I era. So it was awesome to work with her, because she understands the time period so well. So and she's so talented, and I love what she created. So
yeah, she did a fantastic job, and it just makes you want to learn about these characters. We haven't even really introduced the characters yet, and I want to read about them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to read the little B-line, tell you guys what this book is about. And here it is up on here. So the former Russian Empire, 1918, Czech soldier Philip Sedlak, right? Ooh. Never wanted to fight for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So at the first opportunity, he deflected to the Russians. Now he and others like him have formed the Czechoslovakian Legion. Their goal, leave the chaos of Russia, sail to France, and help the Allies defeat the Central Powers. thereby toppling a hated empire and winning an independent Czechoslovakia. With the fall of the Tsar, Nadia Linsky life is in ruins. Her family is dead, her lands are confiscated, and her aristocratic world is gone forever. But Nadia is determined to elude the Bolshevik agent who destroyed her family and find a way to survive in this changed world. When Nadia takes refuge with the Czechoslovakian Legion, the last thing she expects is an ally. But when Philip proposes a sham marriage to ensure her safe passage across Siberia, she takes it. Neither Philip nor Nadia expect real love, not when the Legion has to take over the longest railroad in the world and then hold it against the Bolshevik counterattacks. Partisan sabotage, allied intrigue, and a set of brutal Siberian winters. At risk is the future of Czechoslovakia, the fate of Russia, and their hearts. Oh, I think that sounds so good. I'm so excited to read this. Like, it just has a little bit of everything, a little bit of suspense, it feels like, just from reading this.
Mm-hmm.
But like a good romance in it, a lot of action, a lot of history. I think this is just going to be a fantastic read.
Yeah, I hope people love it. And you're right, it has the romantic aspect, it has a lot of history, and the history makes it suspenseful. And there's, someone trying to kill Nadia, so that makes it even more suspenseful. So yeah, it's a really cool bit of history, and I'm excited that I can tell it. So.
Yeah. Okay, so let's put this back up. But I think we should show the cover, because it is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's one of my favorite covers that I've seen in the last little bit. It's so pretty. So let's go and show it. So that is the cover. It comes out in March of 2023. So you do have to wait a little bit, but just a reminder, we are giving away a couple copies. So if you comment on this post or the post we do later, you'll be entered to win one of the copies. But I love it. I think it's so pretty.
Yeah, Julie did an awesome job on that.
So we see like the train and Nadia, and just, so pretty.
Yeah, and it's challenging to show all that in the cover, but I think she did a good job. She's got the train there, she's got the woman, and that kind of, and with the fur, it kind of says Russia, plus the hammer and the sickle in the background. But it's hard to portray everything about a book in a cover, and I think she did a great job getting a lot of elements that just kind of help you give a feel for the book and a feel for the setting. So yeah,
I completely agree. So let's have you read the prologue. Let's share that and have people get excited for this.
Okay, and I will do a disclaimer that I am not a Russian speaker, so I have looked up a few of these things, but I may not be pronouncing all the city names correctly, so I apologize if I mispronounce them. But yeah, this is the prologue. All we wanted was to go home. Most of us hadn't seen our fatherland since war had broken out in 1914, and we were conscripted into the Austro-Hungarian army. As Czechs and Slovaks, we felt more brotherhood for our Russian opponents than for our imperial officers, so we hadn't always fought well. Some of us had been stuck in POW camps in Russia for months, some for years. We longed to go back to our families, our homeland, and peace. We couldn't go west because a war was in the way. History called it the Eastern Front, but it was far to the west of places we came to know, towns like Chelyabinsk and Yekaterinburg, Irkutsk, and Vladivostok. We never intended to take over the Trans-Siberian Railway, prolong a civil war, spark the most infamous Tsaricide in history, or end up in charge of the Russian imperial treasury. We just wanted to go home. The rest was forced on us. But one thing wasn't an accident. After 300 years of Habsburg subjugation, we wanted a country of our own. And this is the story of how we got it, fighting for it half a world away along 6,000 miles of snow-covered rail line. And then the book goes to kind of a normal third-person point of view tense. So the prologue's the only one that's like the plural point of view. But yeah, hopefully that will give you a bit of an idea of the setting and where the book's going to start and where it's going to go.
I think that sets up the book like really, really well. And I seriously, I'm so excited to read this. Like, I just want to go home and read it right now and not, do my actual job and do work and stuff like that. I just want to sit down and read this.
Yeah, well, at least it's Friday, right?
Yeah, so like I can read it this weekend.
Yep.
Yeah, so pretty, and I'm so excited for it. I think this is going to be a great one.
I'm excited for it too. It's a story I've wanted to tell for a long time, and I'm happy with how everything turned out. So, yeah, hopefully readers will be too. So.
Yes. All right. So remember, if you want an advanced reader's copy, please comment on this post or the post that Wholesome Romance will do later today on Instagram or on our post. Covenant's going to do one as well, and you'll be entered to win one of our advanced reader copies. We're giving away 2 of them.
Yeah. And we should also, one thing that's cool is the front is beautiful. There's a lot of cool stuff on the back too.
I love the back too.
And the pocket watch in the background. So, because Philip is actually a watchmaker in his civilian life before he became a soldier. So that's in there too. So
yeah. Just the entire cover is incredible, and you can tell that it's just going to be an amazing story. Okay. Well, everybody have a great weekend, and thank you for joining us. And remember to comment and tag people in it.